Hey class, this is lesson 8.2. We're going to learn how to multiply polynomials together and how to factor them. So go ahead and do this review quick. Pause here and you can check back for your answers. All right, our objective is to multiply a monomial by a polynomial and to factor a monomial from a polynomial. So let's check this out. What is a simplified form of x squared times quantity 3x cubed minus 2x squared plus 8? Okay, this is just a place where we need to use the distributive property. So what we're going to do is multiply this x squared times 3x third, x squared times 2x squared, and x squared times 8. And since this is multiple choice, we'll use some of our strategies here. When we multiply these first two terms, so we have 2 factors of x here, and then we have 3 factors of x here. When we multiply those together, we're going to get 5 factors of x. That's going to be 3x fifth. And so we can eliminate 2 choices right now. All right. Then the second term is we have a positive out. X squared is really a positive. And in here we have a negative. So when we multiply a positive times a negative, we're going to get a negative. So we can eliminate A. And we know the answer is B. Now just to make sure we understand that, so we're multiplying x squared now times 2x squared. It's going to be a minus there. And the coefficient is 2, and then we just count up how many times we're multiplying by x, and that's 4. And then we have x squared times 8, and then it's just 8x squared. All right, so go ahead, you try it. Check back for your answers. Use a distributive property. All right, we're going to just review what greatest common factor means. So for each of these problems, we're going to find the greatest common factor. Go ahead and pause right now and then circle what you think the choice is. Greatest common factor is the largest number that is a factor of both the numbers. So for instance, number 6 here, circle a pair of numbers with greatest common factor of 4. 4 doesn't go into 5, so it wouldn't be that one. 4 doesn't go into 6. 4 does go into 8 and 12. 4 also goes into 8 and 16, but there is a larger number, and that's 8. So the answer is this one. Go ahead and pause and then try the rest of them. All right, so what is the greatest common factor of the terms 6x cubed plus 12x squared plus 18x? So let's write these down here and just try and write all the factors of each of these numbers. So we're going to use factor tree to kind of help us here. 6 is 2 times 3, written with prime factors. Then x to the third, I'm just going to leave it as x to the third because I think we know that that means x times x times x. And then 12, we'll break that down. That's 4 times 3, and 4 is 2 times 2 times 3, and then we have x squared, which is x times x. And then we have 18, well that's 2 times 9, and 9 is 3 times 3, so that's 2 times 2 times 3, and then times x. So now as I look at these, looking at these numbers 2 and 3, what we have in common for all of these is 1 factor of 2 and 1 factor of 3. So in my greatest common factor, I'm going to have a factor of 2 and a factor of 3. Then if you think about this x, well this is x times x times x. This is x times x. And this is just x. And so the factor of x that's common to all 3 of these is 1 factor of x. So my greatest common factor is 2 times 3 times x, which is 6x. So 6x is the biggest number that will evenly divide all 3 of those terms. Go go ahead, you try it here. Check back with your answer. All right, so what is the factored form of this? Basically, what we're going to do is use the distributive property. We're going to write this as something times something in parentheses. And that thing in parentheses is going to be a trinomial, so there's going to be three terms separated by a plus and a minus. And we're going to get that by thinking about what is the greatest common factor of those three terms. So let's just quick look at those. So we have 6x to the third. In 6 we have a 2 and a 3, and in x we have three factors of x. 15x squared, 15 we have a 3 and a 5, and in x we have two factors of x. And then in 12 we have two factors of 2 and a factor of 3. And then in x we just have one factor of x. So if we think about all that put together, here having three factors of x, here having two factors of x, and here having one factor of x, the factors that they all have in common is they don't all have a 2, so we're not going to use that one. They do all have a 3. And they do all have one factor of x. So the greatest common factor is 3x. Now we're going to write 3x outside the parentheses. Then inside the parentheses, we're going to think, well, what number times 3x gives us this first term, 6x cubed? We can get that actually from our work up here. We know that 3x times 2x times x, or 2x to the second, equals 6x to the third. It's the leftover factors there. Or you can just think of what number times 3 is equal to 6, and what number times x is equal to x to the third. All right, so then we have a minus, and what's left? After we factor out the 3x, we're left with a 5 and an x there. And in this last term, after we factor out a 3x, we're left with 2 times 2, which is 4. And that's considered factored form because these three terms have no factors in common anymore. So I'll let you do that. I'm just going to recommend that you don't work through this factor 3 thing. Just try to think of what the factors of 9 are. That would be 3 times 3. And then you have 6 factors of x. I don't want to write them all out individually. But for 15x to the fourth, you have a 3 and a 5 and 4 factors of x. For 12, you have a 3 and 2 2's, and then 2 factors of x. So what are they all going to have in common? They are going to have, I wrote my prime factorizations up above, but we can see that they're going to all have a 3 in common. And they don't all have a 2 or a 5, but they all have x second in common, and that's because both these powers are higher than that. And so the answer is the greatest common factor is 3 times x to the second, or 3x to the second. And we're going to use that for our prime factorization, and that came from this. 9 was 3 times 3, and then we had 6 factors of x. 15 was 3 times 5 and 4 factors of x. 12 is 2 times 2 times 3, and then 2 factors of x. So what they all have in common is, and they all have an x squared. That leaves us with 4 there. They all have a 3. And this one has an x squared also. So they all have 3x squared in common. And now we're going to factor the greatest common factor from each term. So we're going to put 3x squared here. And inside, we're going to have, for this term, what's left is 3 x to the fourth plus 5 x squared plus 4. All right. We're going to factor out this polynomial. Now, just let's do some thinking here about how we're going to solve this problem. We want an expression for the shaded area. The shaded area is everything but the circle. So if I think of this, if I take this big area of this square, so the whole thing including the circle, and then subtract the area of the circle, that will give me the area of the shaded part. And the area of the square is, the dimensions of that are 3r and 3r because it's square. So I have 3r times 3r, which simplifies to 9r squared. And then for the circle, the radius is r, and the formula for the area of the circle is pi r squared. So, and since my radius is r, that is the area of my circle. Now, if I'm going to put this in factor form, I'm going to think about these two terms and what they both have in common. And we can see that they both have a common factor of r squared. So I'm going to write this using the distributive property. And if I factor out an r squared from 9r squared, I'm left with 9. And if I factor out a r squared from pi r squared, I get pi. So in factored form, we get r squared times quantity 9 minus pi. All right, go ahead and try this problem. You can check back with your answer. All right, so let's check. Find the greatest common factor of each pair of monomials. So writing each of these out, 14 is the same as 2 times 7 times n squared. 35 is the same as 5 times 7 times n to the fourth. 21 is the same as 3 times 7 times n to the third. 18n squared is the same as 2 times 3 times 3 times n to the second. 7n squared is the same as 7 times n squared. 9n squared is 3 times 9 is 3 times 3. So using that information, 14n squared and 35n squared, they both have a common factor of 7 and n to the second. 21n squared and 18n squared both have 3 and n squared in common. And the greatest common factor of 7n squared and 9 is just 1, because they have no factors in common. All right, that's the lesson. I'll see you tomorrow.